all had your coffee and are feeling a little bit more awake. Espero que hayan tomado su café, estén un chin más despiertos. Así que ahora sí que les presento los panelistas de Bitcoin is the Answer, Neutral Censorship-Resistant Money versus the Failure of Crypto, Gold, and Central Bank Digital Currencies. As moderator, you have Kristyna Mazankova, Master in Bitcoin Program Director at Universidad de las Hesperides, and the panelists, Efrat Fenigson, the host of You Are the Voice, Knut Svanholm, host at Bitcoin Infinity Show, and Remu Karhulah, CEO of BTC HEL. Please give them a warm welcome.
Good morning. Is it still morning? It's still morning in Spain, right? Good morning, everybody. When we were discussing how we are going to introduce this panel, I was coming up with some jokes, and it didn't land in my head. So I was just going to start with introducing myself and then giving the opportunity to each of the panelists by explaining why I need censorship-resistant money. So I'm Kristyna Mazankova. I am head of PR at BTC Inc. and also the director of Master in Bitcoin, global master degree, specifically focusing on Bitcoin. And I come from the Eastern Bloc of Europe, and yes, I'm that old that I still remember communism. And as I like to say to my friends in Spain, it's not that we didn't know how to do it properly. We are just the living proof of that the communism doesn't work. And it's very natural that in my country, in Czech Republic, it became very obvious since the beginning that Bitcoin is something that is a really good solution because it's censorship resistant and because it's not easy to confiscate. Something that we do remember from our grandparents and great-grandparents when they were taking away their life savings, their jobs, their land, their houses, and didn't have an opportunity to work on something long-term because they had to work in cooperatives and so on. So it is very natural that lots of the solutions and companies in Bitcoin come from that country. We have the first hardware wallet Trezor. We have the first mining pool, slash pool now, Brains pool. We have Invity building their products. There's so many happening in Czech Republic that when I started working in Bitcoin in 2019 in Czech Republic, I quickly moved into a global environment, and I'm very proud to be building something for the future in global censorship-resistant money environment. Now, Efrat.
Okay, thanks for having me. For me, why do I need censorship-resistant money? Two main reasons. One is I am a dissident voice to the government in the country I was born in and lived most of my life, and I dare to say what I think and to speak out. And even though most of the people in this room probably think that if you live in a Western democracy, then you have freedom of speech and you can do that, then surprise, surprise, in the UK, 12,000 people went to prison last year because of social media posts, for example, right? So the same thing is happening. I'm originally from Israel, so it's not easy to be a dissident voice to the Israeli government, especially not in the current landscape with everything that's going on. I started speaking out during COVID in 2020, 2021, and even then I could feel the heavy arm of the state around me when I spoke out against the policies, the mandates, etc. And I suffered the consequences. And so it was clear to me that much the same way that they came for my bodily autonomy and my freedom of choice, they would come for my private property if I continued to disobey or not comply or, you know, just try to be free and exercise my own free will. That doesn't work anymore actually anywhere, almost anywhere around the world, not even in the West, where we think we have freedom. And so censorship-resistant money becomes very important when you want to protect yourself, to not be under the mercy of the state, the government, a bank that is, again, as I spoke on my keynote, and the incentive structure, they all have carrots and sticks and incentives if they do what the government tells them to do. If they don't, me being banned off Telegram, for example, my 2 channels were closed. They didn't even tell me why, but I'm pretty sure that either they got a lot of complaints about me, or the government or an agency contacted them and said, you need to close these accounts. And they have to comply. It's by law. So just the same way that they can censor me or close my livelihood on different channels, they do it on the financial side as well. So Bitcoin gives me a lot of freedom. It gives me the ability to continue operating without having to worry all the time about my livelihood and about my ability to move around or to do things. So for me, that's a critical tool. And that's reason number 1. And reason number 2, I think that's relevant for all of you here. We are in Europe, in the EU, and in 2027, next year, the ECB, the European Central Bank, is starting officially the rollout of the digital euro, which is a central bank digital currency. Now, I know since you're in Spain, most of you understand the meaning of limitations on your money, because you're already experiencing some of those limitations in your bank accounts and from the taxation office. But with CBDCs, it becomes even worse. And their ability to enforce your livelihood, your actions, your programming the money, putting expiry dates, geolocations, etc., becomes even more radical and easy. And so that's the future we are stepping to. I have other examples later we can share, but when CBDCs are here, if you don't have Bitcoin to protect yourself, you are completely enslaved into the system. Not that the system is not already enslaving you, but with CBDCs, it's the real deal. So that's why you need censorship-free money.
Yeah, for me too, I think the government overreach is obviously one of the biggest reasons, but reason that is not often discussed is that since Bitcoin is censorship resistant, the user experience is actually better than with the traditional banking system. I have a funny story. When we started to organize BTC HEL, and we had our first US-based sponsor, Ocean Mining, and when they wanted to pay the sponsorship amount via the traditional banking system, the bank actually lost our funds, and it took like 2 weeks or 3 weeks for them to figure out where the funds went and how to find them again. And at first we didn't have any money. We started to sell. We started from the bottom, and when they lost the funds, I was like, damn, because I'm kind of like Bitcoin native. I started using it at a very young age, and I didn't have any experience with the traditional banking system, especially with the cross-border payments from US to EU or to Asia. And I was like, this is it, really? If it was Bitcoin, it would be 10 minutes, and I would have access to my funds, and I wouldn't have to ask permission from my bank, from my government, from any third party. So being Bitcoin native, I think it's often like the user experience will be developing one funeral at a time. That my generation, they already feel that Bitcoin is actually the easier one, the easier choice, the easier system, and the traditional is too complicated. It needs too many permission and too many legislations. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
Yeah, Kristyna, you mentioned communism here before, and I think there's a common misunderstanding about why communism failed. So people think that communism failed because of an incentive problem, that if you don't have an incentive to make more money, then you will pick a shitty job and stuff like that. And I mean, when you have a gun to your head, it's you do have an incentive to work, which was true throughout the Soviet Union and its vassal states for 70 years. So
I mean, it was forced. You cannot be unemployed.
No.
Unemployed doesn't
So you
exist.
were forced to work. So you still had the incentive to work. What everyone leaves out, and especially state-funded economists, is that the real problem with communism is the price signal problem. Because if you have central planning and not the free market deciding like prices are signals to the market what to produce and what to focus on. So in the Soviet Union, the state central planner would say, like, we need this and that many tons of bolts, and then the factory would produce one single bolt weighing 3 tons instead of producing what was actually needed on the market. So that is the thing. The price signals get distorted whenever there's interventionism in the market. And interventionism is all the state does. Like every single tax, every single subsidy is a distortion of the true market signal from people to others on what to produce and what to focus on. So it's much harder. This is why cars from the East Bloc were never as good as cars from the more Western countries. So a central bank or money printing in general is like the ultimate form of central planning. Marx wrote himself that a central bank is absolutely necessary for of course he believed that money should be centrally planned. There was a guy called Frederick Bastiat living at the same time as Marx, and in my opinion he's super underrated and Marx is super overrated. And he said that why should like the government shouldn't have any rights to do things to the public that the public itself doesn't have. So if I can't rob my neighbor, the government shouldn't be allowed to do that either, which sort of another way to say that is that there shouldn't be a government. And censorship-resistant money is absolutely crucial to get away from this system. Bitcoin is a much deeper and much bigger revolution than people think it is because we live in these early stages of it. It will take several generations for hyper-Bitcoinization to play out. But now the alternative exists and people will move over to it over time. So it's just a matter of time. All fiat currencies die because they're inflatable. Someone has the right to counterfeit money, and you don't. And that, in the end, that leads to all fiat money being worth nothing. They all die, and then they need to reboot systems every now and then, like the euro was such a reboot, for instance. And in all the reboots, people lose a lot of money too. So it's just a big scheme. That's the greatest, fiat is the greatest pyramid scheme ever conceived by man. And the way to get around it is to use Bitcoin properly, as Bitcoin use Bitcoin for what it was designed for, which is a parallel economy that doesn't, like trying to marry it to the old fiat world and the old fiat institutions is like putting a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't fit. It's not made for that world. It's made to be a tool for people to not have to worry about the old world and not have to worry about what regulators think is okay and not okay. So it's a tool to give a middle finger to the banks and the government, and we should be using it as such. That's my opinion.
Great. We've touched a little bit the crypto, the central bank digital cryptocurrency, whatever they want to call it, and they often just wrap it in a shiny paper, as I call it. Not everything in a shiny paper is a chocolate. Why do you think this central planned digital currency that has, what they are presenting, all the advantages of digital currency is not going to work for average people? Let's start.
It's not going to work? Well, it's going to work if you don't mind continue being a sheep I'm sorry, but
No,
if you don't
it
mind
will work
people
for the
telling you
wolves.
what to do, when to do, how to do it, what's the expiry date, where to use it, what's your quota, you can buy meat or you can't, the cows are farting so you can't use CO2, like all that stuff. If you don't care about that, your life will be great.
But Knut
You'll own
mentioned
nothing
something,
and be
it's like
happy.
a reboot, right? Like it's next level of
But
reboot,
I'll
right?
tell you why you're asking, why would it not work for people who want a little bit of privacy, individuality, responsibility, freedom, right? It will not work because you're essentially selling your soul to the state at the highest level, I think, that we've seen ever. Let's take, for example, what's happening in Ireland now. Ireland is the first country, or maybe the second. Portugal has done something similar, but Ireland is doing it officially to roll out a pilot. They already started in the beginning of this year, of a digital wallet connected with a digital ID. And right now it's voluntary, and they're telling people you can participate in this pilot if you want, but by next year everyone will have to carry that digital ID plus digital wallet in the same app. Now, you remember COVID. If you didn't have that, in Israel they called it the green pass, or whatever QR code that you got, the mark of the beast, that you took the product that they wanted and you participated in the experiment, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't, I mean, you could still fly to certain countries that didn't comply, but it was hard to live like that. So imagine what life's going to look like when you have to present your ID and your digital wallet and pay in a certain way and comply all the time with more and more regulations that they're putting in place just in order to live your normal life. It's going to be very, very difficult. So I think that, I mean, to me, is a no-brainer. And, you know, when everyone celebrates crypto, for example, crypto is a form of CBDC. It's becoming CBDC. And there's a fundamental principle about crypto that people don't get, and the distinction between that and Bitcoin, which is crypto is another form of fiat. There's an issuer, unlimited issuance, you can always print more, you are heavily regulated, you're under KYC policies, AML, etc., and you have to, it's just a digital form of fiat. And so all cryptos, stable coins included, yes, they do have some merits and they do have some positive use cases, but in the end of the day, all of these instruments are going to be sucked in by the state to the CBDC category, and the only thing that's going to stand alone is Bitcoin, that has a fixed supply of 21 million, and no issuer, and no government can control it. So,
Yeah, the fiat currencies today are already CBDCs to a large extent. Every time you swipe your debit or credit card, that transaction ends up in a database somewhere with date and amount spent. So you're already surveyed. I mean, I come from Sweden. They've had the digital ID required to get into your banking app for a decade already. It's almost a cashless society. So everything is already surveyed. All these tools are already in place. So like the CBDCs are just the next iteration of that, but we're already there. It's like the way out is through Bitcoin, and it's the only way to protect yourself. And I think it's crucial that people start taking that seriously and start doing that for real. Yeah, accept Bitcoin for your goods and services.
Yeah, I would like play a little devil's advocate here in a way. Let's say somebody doesn't care about surveillance. Let's say somebody doesn't care about any of these benefits that I completely agree with, but let's say somebody doesn't agree or care about that. You still can view Bitcoin as an insurance. What if they come after you, or maybe you care about it later if it starts to affect your family, because Bitcoin is the only, like you said, parallel system, and the only thing that keeps people not to adapt it is that they think that it's too hard to use, it's too complicated, they don't understand it, and that's why they want to choose ETF or somebody else to have some of the upside. But the only way to get the downside protection is to have your own Bitcoin, to hold your own keys and be your own self-custody, to actually be in the parallel system. Because if you use these products that are embedded in the fiat system, you don't get the downside protection, because if it comes after their Bitcoin or attacks their treasury companies or whatever, they will suffer the same fate. So I think that people need to just understand that nowadays tech is evolved in a way that it's really easy, like it's really dumb, easy, everybody can do it, my grandmother can do it. Like, for example, Bull Bitcoin, they use a lot of time to make the user experience of self-custodying your own Bitcoin straight from the exchange as smooth and as simple as possible. So even if you think that it's not likely that you're going to suffer from the government overreach, it's really small step to take to have the small insurance if you hold a little bit of your own Bitcoin.
Yeah, and we have to remember that KYC, any KYC policy, defeats the very purpose of money. Because if you know your customer, you don't really need money. You can trust them to pay you back. If you trust your customer, then it's not a... Money is needed to mitigate trust in the first place. That's why money emerged on the free market. So KYC is anti the very purpose of money. So think about that next time you KYC yourself, and realize that there are alternatives. There's a platform called Vexel that I really like, in which you have a sort of a web of trust thing via your phone contacts. So you can, when you meet a stranger Bitcoiner in a dark alley, you can at least know that you know some people, you have the same contacts. But I would encourage people to be more courageous and not obey just for the sake of obedience. This is crucial, and Bitcoin doesn't work if it's not resistance money, it doesn't work. In the long run, that's the death of Bitcoin. If it's all through regulated exchanges and if it's all KYC, then the internal economics doesn't work anymore because people won't care about running their own nodes and choosing what software to run. And that's crucial for this thing to function at all.
Just to add on to what you're saying, Bitcoin was created as permissionless money, as peer-to-peer with no intermediary. When we introduce KYC, we introduce an intermediary, someone who has to approve and give you permission to use it, or at least they pretend they don't at the beginning, but then when shit hits the fan, they come after you, and they're in the middle. And if you do want to use Bitcoin as designed to its full potential, if you want it to give you full freedom, you can't use it in a KYC way.
No, you need to accept it for your goods and services. That's how you can really help the economy, the parallel economy
or mine
happen.
it. You can mine it.
You can mine it too, of course. You can rent hash rate and mine it these days, and that's a beautiful thing. So you don't need the machines in your house anymore.
I'm just thinking about, we're talking about individuals and individuals accepting money, Bitcoin for their services and goods. How about companies? How can companies benefit from, using peer-to-peer?
Go on, Remu.
That's an excellent question, because I was adding on top of what we already discussed, that if you have a high volume account, what companies often do, then it's really, really hard to circumvent the KYC process. And that I understand that it's basically impossible if you have like huge volume on your bank account on your company to avoid that, but you still can do self-custody. We have to separate these concepts because of both of those concepts are important, but companies, they can do self-custody even if they do their accounting and reporting and KYC properly. And yeah, there are many companies. I'm affiliated with Bull, but they have a really easy, and they will help in their customer service to companies to set up their payment systems and their accounting systems to favor self-custody.
Yeah, I'd like to, if you extend the thought vector in as far as you can into the future. So if you imagine the world on a Bitcoin standard, what does a company look like? And you quite soon realize that a company on a Bitcoin standard does not have to be a legal entity at all. It can just be a group of people doing stuff. People who trust each other, even if they don't trust each other, there are ways of setting up your Bitcoin accounts or your setting up your internal payment structure to pay everyone according to what the initial contract said. So all of the accounting and all of the reporting that is needed now, and the KYC and AML and all the bullshit, it can really be circumvented when we're on a Bitcoin standard. And if you think about that future is here now. You can already do that. You can already drive make a small business work with your Bitcoiner friends by just accepting Bitcoin and sharing them internally with whatever structure, company structure you want. So to me, this is the biggest problem with the fiat mindset. This is the square peg in the round hole again. We're trying to apply truths from the fiat legacy era to the new world, and they're not really applicable. Accounting is mostly needed for the taxman. Of course, internal accounting can be good. You can make economic assessment of the future, budget stuff, and stuff like that. But the legal aspects of it don't really need to be there on a Bitcoin standard if you're truly living in a parallel economy.
I just want to acknowledge that I'm sure many people in the audience right now have some kind of a dissonance, or they go, like, there's an inbuilt conflict in what we're saying, and I totally understand that, and I want to acknowledge that because we are living in a specific system that we're used to that has specific rules and regulations and norms and programming, right? And we're all living in that system. And here we are, we come with all these weird ideas and we say, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And Bitcoin allows you to do things a totally different way. And I know that there's a dissonance, especially on the business level and the institutional level, where there are some things that if you want to be a corporation today, you have to oblige with certain types of rules. And so all I want to say is essentially, those two systems, the fiat system as it is today and the Bitcoin system as it is being built and living and bubbling under the surface, they cannot coexist forever. It's very hard to mesh them. It's like water and oil, you know, that it's very hard to create a coherent substance from both of them together. I know we are trying to do it because Bitcoin eventually is going to trickle down to almost every layer of society, including organizations and institutions. But we need to keep our heads open, because our minds open, because a lot is going to change in the next decade, in the next decade or two. And we don't know what it's going to look like when Bitcoin is sitting and all those companies' balance sheets and reserves, and people start to understand what they're actually holding and what they can do with it and what kind of freedom it allows them to have. And the reliance on intermediaries becomes less important once they understand that kryptonite that they're holding. So we just have to stay open. This transitory period is going to be with us for another decade or two, in my opinion, and we're going to see a lot of changes and shifts in how life is being lived.
I'd just like to emphasize again the not your keys, not your coins mantra, because it's just as true now as it ever was. And it implies so much, because the ability to move a Satoshi from one address to another is by using the private key. And what is that? It's a secret you keep from everyone else. And this is true for all of the sats in the entire time chain. It's true for all the Bitcoins. So it means that the secret, it lives in your head, meaning that the Bitcoin actually is a part of you, which changes everything. So if you're in court and the judge says that, oh, you haven't paid your taxes on your Bitcoin, you could theoretically just say the 12 words in court, and then everyone else in that court is guilty of the same crime as you are. Like, information being money changes absolutely everything. And we're going, the old world is going to have to adapt to our world, not the other way around. And this might be hard pills to swallow, but that Bitcoin is the antidote to fiat. In the long run, they cannot coexist. So you might as well hop over to the new world as soon as possible instead of staying in the old one.
Yeah, I can balance it out. Knut always has this way of painting a new world, and I want to build that world, but an attendee in the audience today might think that what is the concrete thing that I can do today to be more, to tip my toe into the new system. Like you don't have to, it doesn't have to appear today, we don't have to break the society today, you just have to tip your toe to influence yourself what if it happens. And it's the old saying that you might get some if it catches on. Like, so that's the most important thing. You need to study the tools, you need to get familiar with the new system so that it comes from your like backbone, and you know how to play when the time comes and you actually need these tools and these systems. If you use only the traditional system and if you only use the treasury companies, you are teaching yourself to live in the old system, even though that you get a lot, some of the upside of the number go up phenomenon, but you don't get the upside of being sovereign individual who can actually manage your own tool, your own money, self-custody, and be permissionless. So yeah, that's what I always preach. If you need any help, if you need any assistance, I host a lot of workshops at BTC HEL. We have a place in Helsinki, so you can always contact me or pull my sleeve, and I'm happy to talk about how to actually do it.
Yeah, speaking of the Bitcoin treasury companies, like, and back to the not your keys, not your coins. So what you're doing when you're buying shares in a Bitcoin strategic reserve company is that you're trusting that company to hold the Bitcoin for you, but that company in turn is trusting a custodian to hold the Bitcoin for them. They're probably in some multi-sig solution, but the multi-sig solution at the end of the day is just a couple of guys that can collude, use the keys, and all of a sudden there are zeros on all the computer screens because some guy at Coinbase and his friends just decided to take all the Bitcoins for themselves and fuck off and buy an island somewhere. That is the risk you're taking. So you're getting all of that downside and none of the upside of holding your own keys. When you hold your own keys, none of that risk is there. So you're reintroducing counterparty risk, which is one of the problems that Bitcoin was designed to solve. Bitcoin exists because we want to get away from that, because counterparty risk leads to all this other stuff. It leads to fractional reserve banking, which eventually leads to central banking. I mean, fractional reserve banking is just some guy handing out more receipts than he has gold in his vaults and getting extremely wealthy in the process. And when there's a bank run, the banker gets thrown out by the people. That's how it used to work until they invented the central bank to bail out that banker. So we're living in a system that is fraudulent by design from its very core. Printing money and creating credit out of thin air is theft on every level. There's no getting around that. And holding your own Bitcoin keys is the only antidote to that. It's the only way out of it. So keep that in mind when buying Bitcoin's treasury company equity.
Thank you for that. It brings me a little bit more back to the CBDCs. When we are talking about CBDCs, we know that there are some tests running already in Ireland, and we know that European Union PR team is preparing us for the rollout next year. They're kind of wrapping it in the convenience, right? Like it's going to be easy to use. It's going to be, you're going to have your bank account in your app in the phone, and the transactions are going to be faster, safer. Give us your money and we will protect it for you, right? How do we effectively battle that with the retail, with the mass of people that do have still a problem with, using some technology to actually opt out? Because I know that, for example, in Spain, there is a worry about the digital euro, and in different countries in Europe, people don't really like it and they don't get it, why they should have to have a digital money. People still like cash and they like to pay with cash. Why do you think, how we can battle that? And that's more like general question, if you have ideas.
How can we resist or push back on?
More explain the people that, that you know,
Okay.
the
Well, the narratives and the propaganda of the central bankers is very efficient, and it will convince people that this is fast, immediate, and in the EU now they have this funny thing of sovereignty for the EU. This is our money. It's not, we don't have to rely on like American companies like Visa, MasterCard, or PayPal, you know. This is EU based, so trust us, bro, we're good for it. Their propaganda is going to pull in a lot of people because they have the money to do it and because they're masters of brainwashing.
they
And
have our money to do it.
yeah, and they, of course, they take your tax money, and they also, they are, I mean, this is what they do for a living. They lie to you all the time. They tell you that inflation of 2 or 3% is normal and it's okay. Inflation is not okay, not even 1%.
Nor is 2 or 3.
No inflation is okay. So the bankers lie all the time, and they're going to continue lying. Yeah, go on.
Just to add to that, zero inflation is also a part of the lie. Prices are supposed to fall.
Drop. Yeah,
They are
drop.
supposed to, and
Correct.
for a very
Deflation.
simple reason. If a human being practices doing something, do they get better or worse at the thing they're practicing?
They get better,
And
and
they
the
get
prices
better,
will
and
fall.
if we all do that, why aren't all prices dropping forever?
Yes.
Think about that. And they really should be. So even 0% inflation means massive money printing, especially when we have mobile phones and AI and stuff making us extremely more efficient at producing and transporting every thinkable good or service. So the only way you can see that prices are actually dropping is by putting on the Bitcoin goggles and denominating the world in
Correct.
sats. That you can see that your house is falling in value, everything else is falling in value.
Correct.
Because it's not the money gaining
Yeah.
value, it's all the prices falling. Just as prices aren't going up denominated in fiat, the purchasing power of the money is going down. The same is true for Bitcoin, but the inverse of that.
Correct, and they're gonna, that lie, they're gonna continue to perpetuate it into the CBDC era, and it's going to work, and people are going to fall for it. The only thing you can do at this point in time, except for, you know, harnessing your own gift, if you are someone who is good at educating or talking to people and showing them the way and showing them the truth, do that. Otherwise, just stand back and look at a lot of shit hitting the fan, because everyone's gonna suffer when all this new digital surveillance era is upon us. The digital prison is not going to be fun for anyone. And every day now, I don't know if you guys are following, but especially here in the EU, they're coming out with more and more draconian legislation around age verification, VPNs, access to websites, controlling KYCing AIs, like there's everything. And it's going to get even worse, it's going to accelerate. So the only thing you can do is watch people in pain. And only through the pain they are going to understand, unfortunately. Or not, or they're just going to suffer. So there's not much else we can do, I'm sorry to say, but I continue to do what I do so that I can help people that want to learn and want to understand how they can help themselves. But otherwise you have to just see it unraveling and let people experience the pain so they can wake up out of it.
I am very optimistic, so a chronicle optimist here. So I would see the CBDC push being more an opportunity for people realizing that it's just not like better cryptocurrency because it stayed back, but understanding that it's actually the reason why Bitcoin is here and actually pushing people more forward into Bitcoin.
A perspective that I often like to emphasize is that because my thinking process is always like probabilistic. I used to play online poker a lot, so I always do risk management, and I'm sure that a lot of people here who work in finance are also working in risk management. So instead of trying to convince people that these CBDCs or these draconian laws are gonna ruin their lives or are gonna cause pain or are going to be really bad, which I completely agree with, you don't even have to convince them about the worst possible scenario. You just need to convince them that what if this happens? It's possible that this happens. It has happened in the world history. It has happened in China. It has happened all around the world. What if it happens in your own home home country? What if it happens in EU? And then when it clicks that, okay, there is like, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 15% likelihood that it's gonna be a dystopian hellhole, then the only answer to that is Bitcoin. They will basically have to default for the only parallel system, plan B. The plan B is Bitcoin. If it happens to you, this is the only way to prepare for that. So yeah, they don't even have to believe in wholeheartedly. They just have to know that this is the only way to prepare.
And I'll add on to it, just to honor the name of the panel as well, that many people turn to gold or cash, as you said, as different hedges for that. The problems are that they both have shortcomings, and that's how we ended up with centralized systems with,
And can be seized, quite
with
frankly.
fiat in the first place. That's right. And so they're not the solutions. They may be a short-term, Band-Aid, but in the long term, if people really want to be in a different system that has different rules and no rulers, Bitcoin is the only answer.
Yeah, the EU is already forcing you to accept all cookies. Don't accept the cake.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.